could say, you're not doing it. And that's important to know because,
for sure.
because then you're going to
Feedback.
pay attention and do it better, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you're studying the life of Jesus as an example, or Buddha, that was the language of the time, right? So here we are in the contemporary world, and science has become that language. So when you combine a little quantum physics with neuroscience and neuroendocrinology and psychoneuroimmunology and epigenetics, all of those different branches of sciences, the new sciences, point the finger at possibility. And in this particular work, I think that the more you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, the how gets easier, because you can assign meaning to what you do. So then, this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. Because information is so readily available, you can gain information. You don't need an authority. You don't need a priest. You don't need a teacher. You don't need a governor. You can gain information without passing through some type of authority. And so people are empowered. And the next most practical question is, how am I going to apply this to my life? Now, when you learn new things, you make new connections in your brain. That's what learning is. But if you can't remember what you learned, then you haven't made any new connections that are sustainable or maintainable. So the more the person can repeat what they've learned, the more they're installing the neurological hardware in their brain in preparation for the experience. And so now they're priming their brain for the act, right? And when the experience happens, experience then enriches the circuitry in your brain. That's what experience does. So now you're laying down even more neurological tracks, but the payoff is the chemical called the emotion. And the moment you feel unlimited, the moment you feel grateful, the moment you feel abundant, now you're teaching your body chemically to understand what your mind is intellectually understood. So knowledge is for the mind and experience is for the body. And now we're embodying the truth of that philosophy. And we're literally signaling new genes in new ways and changing our future, or changing our genetic future. And if you've done it once, then you're an athlete, you'd be able to do it over and over again. And if you keep repeating it, you neurochemically condition your mind and body to begin to work as one. And the redundancy of the act over and over again conditions the body to know how to do it better than the mind. Now it's innate in you. It's second nature. It's easy. It's familiar. It's who you are. And so I think we start as philosophers, we initiate, we become initiates, and then we master it. Knowledge, experience, wisdom, mind, body, soul. Learning it with your head, applying it with your hands, knowing it by heart, thinking to doing to being. And so I think to answer that kind of question or that comment is that, we should get up as if our prayers are already answered. The problem is that our senses fool us into separation. The person says, I want to be healed, I want to be healthy, I want to be wealthy. And they imagine it and they come back and it's not there. And when they see it, it's not there. The thought of their future creates the emotion of lack or separation. And if thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body, now you have mind and body in opposition. So then, if you think about something like appreciation or thankfulness or gratitude, when you are receiving something, when you just receive something, when something is happening to you in the moment, or something just happened to you that you enjoy, or you're surprised about, or is pleasing to you, you feel this emotion of gratitude. So gratitude becomes the signature, the emotional signature that it's already happened. Gratitude is the ultimate state of receiving. So now when the person combines a clear intention of their future, and they open their heart and they feel the emotion of that future, their body is objective. It's the unconscious mind. It doesn't know the difference between the actual experience in their life that's creating the emotion and the emotion that they're fabricating by thought alone. In that moment, their body is believing it's in that future, in the present moment. And the stronger the emotion they feel, the more altered they feel inside of them, the more they pay attention to the picture in their mind. And we could say then that they're beginning to remember their future. And biologically, it's the same as remembering your past. So if you keep practicing opening your heart and you keep combining it with a clear intention, then the thought and the feeling changes your state of being. Which means then, if you keep doing that over time, you'll feel like your future has already happened. Now, what's the significance of that? If you feel like your future has already happened, you stop looking for it. You're no longer waiting and wondering when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen. you feel like it's already happened. So now you take your foot off the gas, and you're no longer trying to predict or control or expect how it's going to happen. You're connected emotionally to your future. Well, the antithesis is also true. The stronger the emotion you feel for some betrayal, some shock, some trauma, the more altered you feel inside of you, the more you narrow your focus on the outer environment, and the brain takes a snapshot, and that's called a memory. And so the stronger the emotion, the more the brain embosses the imagery neurologically in the brain. So then the person thinks neurologically within the circuitry of that experience, and they feel within the boundaries of those emotions. So then we could say then the person's biology is literally in the past. So you can't create a new future if your state of being is in the past. So people reaffirm their identity this way. They wake up in the morning and they say, let me think about my problems. And those problems are memories of past experiences that are etched in their brain. So they think about the person, the place, the object, the experience. And we could say then, if they believe that their thoughts have something to do with their destiny, they're thinking in the past. And every one of those problems has an emotion associated. So now they feel unhappy, now they feel fear, now they feel unworthy. It's a conditioning process, because conditioning, all you need is an image. They've mastered this on television. An image or a brand and an emotion. And all you need is a stimulus and a response. So every time the person remembers their future, or their past, as they remember their past, the image with the emotion is literally subconsciously conditioning their brain and body into the past. And so if they're living in the familiar past, guess what? They're going to predict the next future. They're going to want to be able to predict their future. So because that's the known. So that there's only one place where the unknown exists, and that's the present moment. And teaching people how to get into the generous present moment takes an act of awareness. And most people would rather turn on their TV or, get on their cell phone or Facebook or whatever. And this is actually, Aubrey, not a bad thing. This is actually a moment of awareness.
Yeah.
And, when you're inside the jar, you can't see the label. And so we have this huge frontal lobe that gives us self-awareness. So then the insight never changes anything. You could have the insight that you're addicted to fear, you're addicted to competition, you're addicted to struggle. But that really means is that we're addressing reality matter to matter. And what we're at one point of awareness, one point of consciousness, and we're putting our attention on another point of consciousness, a future, an outcome. And the only way we know how to get there, when we're matter trying to change matter, is that we force, we control, we predict, we fight for it. Because that's how you are when you're living in survival. So then we have to move our bodies through space, and that takes time. So we think if we rush, that we're actually going to get there faster. But more and more of the rushing creates more of the addiction of those emotions, because the adrenaline that's released is actually an arousal. So a person is using the conditions, the problems, the situations in their life to reaffirm their addiction to some emotion. To me, that means we become addicted to the life we don't even like. And so that's why change is so hard. So then let's offer another alternative. Well, when you begin to create from the field instead of from matter, the only way you can do that is you have to learn how to take all of your attention off your body and become a nobody. Take all of your attention off all the people in your life that you give so much of your attention and energy to because you have an emotion associated with them. And get beyond all the people in your life and go from a someone to a no one. Mm-hmm. Now, if you've worked your whole life being a someone, or if you've been working your whole life thinking that you're your body, you're going to have to work a little harder because that's your identity. Sure. That's what you're associated with. And if this was easy, everybody would be doing it. So then you have to go get beyond all the things in your life, your cell phone, your computer, your car, and literally go from something to nothing. You have to take all your attention off the place you work, the place you live, the place you need to be, the place you're sitting, and go from somewhere to nowhere. You got to stop thinking about the predictable future and the familiar past and go right into the present moment and go from some time to no time. And if you do that properly, you become pure consciousness. And that's how you enter the field. Now, we've done the research on this. We call it getting beyond the self. Now, once you are pure consciousness, you're taking all of your attention off this three-dimensional reality. Now, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So if you've taken all of your attention off of everything material, there's only one place you're going to wind up, and that is the immaterial realm called the quantum field, an invisible field of energy that unifies and connects everything material. So now when you're creating from the field and you combine a clear intention with an elevated emotion, and you're connected and you feel connected, the suggestion of an alternative way to create is that when there's a vibrational match between your energy and some future reality, you actually no longer have to go anywhere to get it. You're actually the vortex, and you will collapse space and time and draw the experience to you. Now that, to me, is a lot more fun because the experience is the unknown. You can't predict when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen, because if you can predict it, it's the known. So then you have to lay down the very thing you use your whole life to get what you want for something greater to occur. Now that goes against generations untold of conditioning and a lifetime of habituation, believing that we're trapped in this material world. And yet I can say to you without a doubt that once you understand that formula, and once you know how to create that kind of brain and heart coherence, the side effect of that is a change in biology, neurologically, chemically, hormonally, genetically. We've measured it. We've seen gene regulation changes in 4 days. More brain coherence, more heart coherence. Your brain's working better. You're trusting your heart. It's open. There's different chemicals that are released. Oxytocin suppresses survival centers, resets the baseline of a person's trauma or shock. Your immune system goes up. You lengthen your telomeres. We've measured that too. So you're changing the future of your body. You're extending your life. So then the belief, the subconscious belief that is impossible. You may say, oh yeah, I believe that a person can be healed. Yeah, I believe in miracles. But when it comes time to actually execute them, you got to step outside a little bit and you got to trust a whole lot. So then when you start witnessing it, it becomes like a brush fire. I mean, we see in our events, once we start seeing those healings, we know it's going to just get better and more phenomenological. And then the side effect of that is a person with Raynaud's syndrome who has incredible sensitivity to cold, that has an immune problem, you can't go out of their house. They stand on the stage and they say, I cannot believe it. I was just outside. It's November in London. I have no pain in my hands. And someone in the audience watches the same thing. We had 4 people at that event with Raynaud's syndrome go into complete recovery, into complete remission. So just like an infection spreads amongst the community and creates disease, all of a sudden health and wellness can be as infectious as disease. And wow, and all of a sudden it's the new consciousness, it's the new way. It's so we don't have to rely on something outside of us to make us feel better inside of us. We begin to figure that out. So then the more you become familiar with how you feel and changing that state of being, the easier it will be for you to do it with your eyes open as well as your eyes closed. And if you go back to the old state of being, there's a good probability that your pain or your condition will come back. So there's this kind of waltz that goes on when people are learning how to heal and change. They take a few steps forward and then a few steps back, and then 3 steps forward and only 1 step back. And they got to practice self-regulating. They got to practice what they're paying attention to, what they're unconscious of. And if you stay with it for a long enough period of time, all of a sudden now the person reaches a point, we've measured what happens, where their chemistry changes so dramatically that they're literally in love with life. Now, imagine what happens when oxytocin is released in the quantities that we see. Oxytocin signals nitric oxide. Nitric oxide signals a chemical called endothelial-derived relaxing factor, and that's a big word or set of words that just means a chemical that signals the arteries in your heart to literally expand. And when they expand, you're getting more blood flow in there. And just like when your sexual organs are aroused and there's blood flow in there, now with the same intensity, you're going to feel it right in your heart, and it's going to be way bigger. And now the person's heart is wide open. So here's the question. The person feels those emotions. Do you think they're going to want to judge somebody else in that moment? You think they're going to want to hold a grudge? They're not going to try to forgive. They're going to feel so amazing. They're not going to want to lose this feeling, and they're just going to say, I forgive you. I'm not going to give this feeling up because of you. Now that's the side effect of true transformation. The side effect is a greater level of consciousness. The side effect is a greater skill set in life. And I think that when you start getting good at this, then all the things you thought you wanted, you no longer want, because when you're creating more brain and heart coherence, you feel more whole. And the more whole you feel, the less you live in lack. So how could you want many things if you feel whole? It feels like you already have them. And that's actually when you start to see those wonderful miracles, those synchronicities, those serendipities, those coincidences happening in a person. Those are experiences coming to them. That's the field dropping breadcrumbs saying, keep going, keep going. And there's a synchronization between that person's energy and their future, and the side effect of that are signs. And that's when it gets to be exciting, because every sign does what? It creates an enthusiasm, an excitement. And you're kind of going, hey, there's another sign, I'm going to go do it again. So now you're not going, oh, I have to meditate today. Oh, jeez, I got to create my life.
You're looking forward
You're like, oh my God, I don't want the magic to stop happening. I'm going to get into it. And every synchronicity creates that elevated emotion, and you use that energy for the next creation. And people climb out of their lives, climb out of their pasts. So the body's a protein-producing machine. Every single cell in your body, except red blood cells, makes proteins. Muscle cells make muscle proteins, actin and myosin. Skin cells make skin proteins, collagen and elastin. Your stomach cells make stomach proteins called enzymes. Your immune system makes immune proteins called antibodies, or immunoglobulins. Your eye cells make eye proteins called keratin. So your body's a protein-producing machine. And in order for those cells to make proteins, a gene has to be regulated. So then they used to say genes create disease. Lie. It's an absolute lie. There's a very small percentage, about 5 to 1% of the people on the planet are born with a true genetic condition like type 1 diabetes. The other 95 to 99% is created from lifestyle or behaviors. Two identical twins sharing the same genome. One dies at 52, the other one dies at 88. Well, what happened there? It was the reaction to the environment that caused their genes to be switched on or upregulated to make a healthy protein, or downregulated to make a cheaper protein. And it turns out that when you're living in stress and living in survival, you're living in emergency mode, and that's not a time for growth and repair.
Yeah.
That's a time to mobilize all the body's energy, all its resources, from some endangered situation, real or imagined, in their life. So if you're living in emergency mode for an extended period of time, and you keep signaling that gene, well, my goodness, it makes sense then that over time the gene's going to begin to wear out, just like taking a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Sooner or later, you're going to start making a cheaper protein. So the expression of proteins literally is the expression of life. So then, is it possible then to signal the gene ahead of the environment? The answer is absolutely yes. Because if a person's waiting for their wealth to feel abundance, if they're waiting for their health to feel wholeness and gratitude, if they're waiting for their new relationship to feel love, they're living by the old model of reality of cause and effect, waiting for something out there to change to make them feel better, and here, take away their lack or emptiness. But the moment the person embraces the emotion ahead of the event, if they understood what they were doing and why they were doing it, then if the environment signals the gene, and it does, and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, when you embrace the emotion ahead of the experience, you're signaling the gene ahead of the environment. And if genes make proteins, and proteins are responsible for the structure and function of your body, you begin to become that very person. So it's not our wealth, it's not our health, it's not our new relationships, it's not the things we accumulate, it's who we become.
Yeah.
So we overcome the old self, which takes a great act of will and awareness, and we become somebody else. So then when you become it, nobody can take that away from you. In fact,